Sarita, that's so sad, Sarah sniffled, shaking her head. How did you get through that? I miss my dad so much, and you kept going after losing your daughter. Loss is never easy, Sarita replied gently, and it truly never goes away. But to live on for those who are gone, I think that's even more important than the world now. Kenny, I know he's lost a lot, but he just keeps going. We found the comfort in one another and had the strength to live. Clementine nodded, recalling the similar words that she had told Sarah in the trailer. Even now, those words stuck with her. Lee would want her to survive. I think Nelani would have been happy for you to work to save kids' lives, Sarah commented quietly. It's not your fault that she died. Neither of the girls could offer much comfort, but Sarah was definitely better at it overall. Sarita did appreciate it, though, judging by the smile on her face. Thank you, she whispered, turning to the both of them. And Clementine, you asked me why I didn't help Kenny and Carl with Carlos before. I could tell you now. Clementine nodded, rubbing the back of her head uncomfortably. Sarah was biting at her bottom lip at the mention of her dad, but it took her a moment to clear that after. I wanted to. I really did, Sarita explained. I was just stuck with sudden worry that Kenny wouldn't make it, and it would be Nelani all over again. It was one of my main problems in the nursing field. If I knew the person I would be treating, I would freeze up. My best friend's son had to be operated by someone else because I was having anxiety. It was a mess. She then shook her head, running a hand down her dark hair. Well, that explained it. The girl supposed Sarita was scarred, and despite knowing how to treat Kenny, she was too paralyzed by the fear to do anything. Clementine then felt a new rush of pity towards the woman. She had been through hardships, and no one even bothered to even ask her those things. Not even the people should pry, but in the many of the other groups, save for Kenny, she really spoke to Sarita. If they were all going to travel together, at least they could all do is get to know each other a bit more. Clementine realized with dismay that she also applied to Troy. Sour taste splashed at the back of her throat in the thought. It seemed like he was sticking around for the time being, and she'd have to force herself to get to know him, if he'd let her. I'm just glad Kenny's okay. It's not your fault, Sarita, but it's no one's but Carver's, the man said. After all, Kenny had struck down in the first place. Then again, who'd take the radio that had gotten him into trouble? Clementine felt that familiar guilt bubbling up within her, but she had banished it before it could even take control of her. It was the last thing she needed right now. A yawn passed by her lips, making the girl realize just how tired she really was. Sarita then took notice, urging her to go to sleep. You'll need to be rested when we move on in a few days. Go on, off to bed, she pointed out, shooing the girl off to bed like a parent would. Clementine wouldn't appreciate the mother in act, but she was too tired to fight it. With a nod, she then stood up and walked over to the others. Curling up at the last thing she heard before slipping off into sleep was Sarah taking a post at Troy's side for the rest of the night. It wasn't quite morning yet, but at dawn's light hadn't started to shine through the opening on the deck. Some of the birds were still asleep. Clementine's eyes still opened. However, she was met with the sight of Nick snoring next to her. With an amused grin, she then shook her head and flipped herself over, was about to go back to sleep again. However, since there was no one on the opposite side of her, she then noticed at a clear view of Sarah and Troy, who were sitting now in earshot. They didn't notice her looking, though. She curiously kept her gaze on them. Troy was sitting up now. His face was still looking pale, but considerably better, and gulped down a swig of water bottle in his hand. Clearly thirsty, he nearly finished off the bottle, handing it back down to the girl. Thanks, he gasped, wiping his mouth with his arm. No problem, Sarah replied, looking quite nervous. Clementine didn't blame her, though. She didn't know why Sarah would volunteer to be one of the first to watch the irritating man. After all, he couldn't have been that kind to her, and she owed him for nothing. None of them owed anything for him. But Sarah, like Sarita, was just a good person, that much obvious to every little actions she took. Troy leaned against the wall, his gaze trailing down to his severed limb. Fuck, he muttered, closing his eyes. What does it feel like? Sarah asked quietly. Here you got ghost pains? Well, I think they get their wise. They're so annoying now. It feels like it's still there, and it hurts like hell. Sarah swallowed hard, fidgeting with the water bottle. I have heard of those, common amputees. Who else thinks it would be common with? Troy asked roughly. Although it seemed like a joke, Sarah flinched despite herself. I guess you're right. I'm really sorry about the ghost pains. How do you feel otherwise? Well, what, ain't that obvious? I'm frickin' sore, Sarah, and just weak as fuck. Jesus Christ, are you really that stupid? Sarah's eyes then narrowed, her lips piercing with a frown. You don't have to be rude, you know. Give me a reason, you little shit. Because I helped you save your life, Sarah blurted out. Not loud enough to wake anybody up, but just loud enough to contact with Troy. I don't know why you're so mean, but we're trying to help you. You wouldn't be here if it weren't for Clem, and she's making sure that you were taken care of, and we even brought your fever down. So, he hissed, making a face. Clearly he was not keen on being protested against. As someone who is used to being the bully, being the opposite position must be a hard switch. Not that Clementine pitied him one bit. It was his own fault after all. Sarah couldn't finish her thoughts, merely shook her head, gazing down. Troy didn't even challenge it, though he merely just shrugged in his glare, subsiding for the time being. Clementine felt silence wash over between them, and almost felt as if though she began to doze off again. However, before she could, Troy finally spoke. His words were low and quiet, as he could manage, but still managed to hear. I guess I shouldn't be yelling at y'all if you're going this far, he muttered, rolling his eyes. Don't expect a thank you, though, and it don't make me your frickin' equal. Sarah blinked, her eyes shifting to Troy's wound. Is it scary missing an arm? She asked calmly, her expression pensive. He didn't respond with anger like Clementine thought he would. In fact, she would have bet money, if money was meant anything anymore, that he would have said something along the lines of, none of your business, you little shit. But instead he simply just stared back, teeth clenched tightly. Yeah, he simply muttered. I don't know if I could do it. Survive, I mean. In the rare moment of weakness, Troy then lowered his head like a defeated animal. If I keep imagining myself dying in horrible ways because of this shit. He gave a long, disgusted look towards the stump left behind from the amputation, eventually pushing a long sigh past his lips, his eyes shutting tightly. Clementine even wondered if the fever was making him put his ever-present guard down. If he still acted as if he was sick at all, he seemed to be doing much better, though it still had some physical symptoms. At least he was up and talking, though, despite his words being very un-Troy-like. Sarah swallowed hard. Back before all this happened, there was a dog, Toby, that lived up on the streets not far from me. He was a good dog, but I think he was, abused. Our neighbors got him from a shelter, and he only had 3 legs. Before he could interject, she flashed him a requesting glance to silence him and continued. At first, he surprised me a little, just because it was out of the ordinary to see a dog like that, but Toby was just like any other dog. He could walk, eat, run, and it was just like he didn't even notice anything was gone. Of course, Troy didn't even make the inspirational story meant for his benefit, like he would have. Instead, his lips curled back in the snarl, voice growing louder in anger, and he growled, Are you comparing me to a frickin' dog? The girl winced at the volume, shrinking back a bit in the fierceness of his words. I'm sorry! Troy froze to the apology, rage practically melting off his face. After a few moments of silence between the two of them, he finally let out another long sigh, his eyebrows knitting together. He lifted his hand and ran it through his hair, pulling it lightly at the dirty strands of brown. Finally he spoke, though Clementine, who really seemed to strain her ears to hear him, it was a low whisper. Unvery like him, of course, but a certain emotion she couldn't really quite piece. No, he mused, with a distant look in his eyes. You might have gotten it right. And in the end, I guess I'm nothing but a dog.